the life that you live, and then there's your unlived life, and the resistance sits in the middle. And resistance is it could be physical, as in your situation, as in people just not encouraging you to chase a dream, to trying to keep you in their environment, or it could be yourself, the fear. And he's made a good point that the pain of not doing it is worse than any fear of failure. Yeah. So I got to the point where I said, I'm not afraid of failing. I'm afraid of my failure to try.
Hi everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is Humans with Luke McCredden. I'm Luke McCredden. The voice you're hearing off the top there is that of Matt Peake. Matt is a film writer, a comic writer, he's a parent, he's a super creative dude. He's a very, very nice guy, and I loved having a chat with him on the podcast. We chat about all things to do with the writing processes, the creative mindset that he takes on when he takes on these projects, and very interesting. Love his train of thought, and I love his mindset when it comes to having a crack. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this chat. This is episode 2 with Matt Peake. But we're in this routine now, which is really cool, where it's usually with the boys, throw them in the bath, and while they're in there, I go and grab it and just start playing, and they love it. They're just
awesome.
It's
I love the acoustic version.
Yeah. Which is what
I guess you couldn't have the electric near the bar.
No, but I mainly I played everything, but my heart was with the acoustic stuff. I love it, and I still do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really fun. I just did it one night, and the boys and all the kids love music. The boys in particular, really, they've got this. Ari, who's 4, has got this fascination with music that is even before my time, but I love too. Like, his favourite band is Creedence, and like, go figure, like this 4-year-old, and he will now, and it was probably because I listened to it a bit or whatever, but he's like adamant, put that song back on, put that on, put and he'll jump on my phone onto Spotify, and he's got his own little playlist. When he finds a song he loves, he wants to put that in there, and there's a real pattern. There's like, Eagles, Creedence, and then some of the. And again, I think it's got something to do with the overall vibe of it, but there's a lot of Jack Johnson and that sort of stuff too. He really likes that.
Dexter, my son, when he was like 2 or 3, there's only one song that he liked, and it was the Bruno Mars one. Forget the name of it. It's the one with Mark Ronson.
Oh, yeah. Uptown Funk.
Yeah. But now, like, that's all he would listen to that on repeat and watch YouTube on
Still?
repeat. No, but now he's more into. I think boys like guitars.
Yeah.
Like once, like he likes Wolfmother, AC/DC.
Cool.
And when that guitar gets cranking, he just gets pumped up.
Really?
So it could be a similar thing.
Yeah,
Creedence,
maybe. Yeah.
Eagles. It's really clear, heavy guitars.
Yeah. And when you're right, because when those, and back then the riffs, I love, I love all that, and they were so prominent, as you say. You can see it in his face. Like Ari, there was one the other night that came on, and you'd never heard it, but straight away,
Dexter loves you too.
Just looked, and he's like, yeah. Nod his head, and he's
like, Where the Streets Have No Name. When that comes on, he just goes crazy for it.
It's cool, eh?
Yeah,
it's so good. And I don't know whether it's got anything to do with, and I'm sure it's somehow linked, but. Like, I grew up with that. Like, I grew up with Bob Dylan, and when I say that wasn't my era, but Dad was always playing it, and the Beatles, Eagles, Bob Dylan, all that, and I still love it. So I'm really happy that Ari's into that, and I think, I don't know, like, for music for me has always been really special and important. So I love that he's into that, and I hope that sticks with him forever.
Well, I was talking to Anna last night, and there's actually no big band in the world, because I was watching a U2 clip from Live Aid for whatever reason last night, and just the girls throwing themselves at Bono, and I remember how there used to be advertising for concerts for big bands, like you'd always say, they're the biggest band in the world.
Yeah,
there's no big band
in
the world anymore.
That's a good point.
And I reckon it's obviously now it's electronic, it's a lot of hip hop, R&B or pop, but that when the Stones, the Beatles, U2, Queen, Oasis, Radiohead, even REM, like bands like that, the Eagles, their music was that far, and still Springsteen in the EC is still that far ahead of anything else now.
Yeah, you're right.
And I reckon it's got to be. We'll look back at them like we look at Mozart and Beethoven.
Yeah,
and because there's only a handful of those massive power bands.
Yeah,
that they just don't exist anymore.
No.
And I miss those days, man, when there was 70,000 people at the MCG.
Even the likes of Metallica, who are obviously still doing doing their thing. But in their prime, and they're still going great. But in their prime, that was mega. Like nothing could reach that height. No. And you're right. Without spending much time thinking, there's probably artists like Beyonce or something like that.
Yeah, there's still artists.
But I wonder whether that the power that, say, the Beatles, look, maybe they're in a different conversation, but the power that, even Bon Jovi and all that, that they had when they walked on stage, where people just lost their fucking minds, went nuts. I wonder whether I don't think that exists.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah,
and there's artists that are huge, but the music that those in particular those bands brought was just a total experience.
Yeah.
And there's huge artists that cater to younger generations.
Yeah.
And I'm 37, so I try to keep in touch with that. But one thing I've noticed is that just that really so U2 would write it's quite political, quite heartfelt, comes from a really raw place.
Yeah. And
the Stones even were too, and then the Beatles went through a phase, and Springsteen was mostly saying about his working class life.
Yeah.
There's no one sort of really capturing even what Midnight Oil used to sing about.
Yeah.
There's no one really going for it in a sort of rock sense and connecting. I reckon there's a market for it
or is it not being allowed? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's people out there doing that. Like, even to the point of Rage Against the Machine, or another one. But I wonder if there are, but it's not selling, or it's the impression is it won't sell anymore.
Is it too heavy?
Is it too much?
Yeah,
because it's everywhere, right? So the other thing to that I was thinking was maybe, the likes of the bands coming through the 60s and 70s were untouchable. The only time you ever saw them was either at a live show or waiting for them to get off a plane or something. But even the likes of Beyonce or something like that, they're a lot more accessible now. You can find them on YouTube or on a podcast or on do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe the whole idea of the celebrity status has changed. Like, celebrity now is, the celebrity label's slapped on everyone these days.
Yeah.
But back then, like, when I saw the Eagles for the first time in concert, which was, early 2000s, I think, it was like, I felt like it was a weird, I've never felt like that before. I was seeing these guys who were legitimate legends of rock and roll, of music in general, and legitimate celebrity that you couldn't touch. Like, they weren't real. It was like they weren't real.
Yeah. Well, back when they came out, would they have been considered like pop? Or, like, I don't mean pop as in, but they would have been mainstream. Like, they would have been played on the radio.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, they would have for sure. But you're right. Yeah, it's a different thing. And that's going back. I think why I find it really important and really cool that my son and you were saying with your son are in touch with that. That's great. And don't get me wrong. There's the Taylor Swifts of the world are great for the kids.
I'm a huge Post Malone fan. I'm always down for a banger.
Yeah.
But
I just hope the raw and the organic sort of music of that time doesn't get lost. I don't think it will. There'll always be people playing it and talking about it, but I just the importance of it.
I reckon it'll come in waves, and it'll take a monumental world event to then rebirth bands that sort of sing, for a generation, and not to a generation.
Yeah.
I think.
And it's also that you could talk for ages about it, and because it wasn't even like, you hear some people go, well, it was easier to be new in those eras, but I'm not sure that if one of those bands, those big time bands, came out now, they'd still be new. Like, it's still doing stuff that no one's done or no one's doing again. Like,
yeah. What's that film Yesterday?
Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I actually years ago, and this I'm hand on heart, I had a similar idea for a movie.
Because I love the concept.
But it was about the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, right.
Like, it was just a guy that wakes up and the Stones don't exist from an accident.
No shit.
Yeah, legitimately. I'd written it down. So the
Man.
same idea.
Yeah.
And it is that, what if you woke up in a world where Michael Jackson didn't exist or the Beatles?
Yeah.
And then you wrote those songs. They'd still kill.
Yeah. I agree. We saw that the other night, Ricky and I.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah.
Is it good?
I loved it, man.
Yeah.
I loved it. You know, we're not talking, Schindler's List or, but it won't go down as one of the all-time greats, but it was one of those movies that I just loved and I'll watch again happily. And I'm not a movie buff.
It's a feel-good film.
It is.
Yeah.
We looked around at the end, not on purpose, but you sort of stand up and look at everyone had a smile on their face.
Yeah,
it was just that sort of film. But the concept is what got me. When I first saw the trailer, I'm like, this is a cool idea. There's something out there. Like, it's
such an obvious idea.
And then in the car on the way home, you're like, what if that has happened? What if Ed Sheeran's songs aren't his? You start talking about that shit.
Well, there's another film coming up called Blinded by the Light.
Oh, yeah?
Which is about this, I think he's a Sri Lankan or Indian kid that discovers Bruce Springsteen.
Yes,
and it just changes his life.
Yeah.
That like Springsteen's my
based on a
all-time
true
favourite
story. I think I saw.
Maybe,
but man,
I can't wait for it though.
This is the thing with music, and it's not for everyone, or it doesn't do it to everyone, but it plays major parts in people's lives. Music's played a huge part in my life, and continues to, and I hope it continues to. I hope it does forever.
Yeah.
But not for everyone. But yeah, and so I've got no doubt. And you hear stories of music saving people's lives.
Absolutely.
Those really tough times of darkness, and you just pick up something and you start listening. You just, I don't know, it gives you an escape. Music's always been a bit of an escape for me, as well as just enjoying it for what it is.
Oh yeah, and if you look at how young kids, babies, soon as they hear that tune, they start moving. So, it's connected through the stars and space. That's what string theory is based on. Yeah. It's like, that was because of its analogy for musical instrumentation. So it's certainly something that connects us all in a wanky way. But I've found even in my early 20s, when you're sort of finding yourself as a young man, when you, and that's where Springsteen came in, because it's like, you're in love and you're trying to make your way in the world, and here's this guy who was 20 when he was writing those songs. Yeah. Like, unbelievable. Yeah. Just connecting with you and really being inspiring about, chasing a dream and just going for it. It's and I hope that, our kids, there's artists that influence them in positive ways and life ways, rather than just that sort of sexual boppy. There's a market for it, but there's got to be a bit more meaning in some of the music, hopefully in the future. Yeah, no, totally. I totally agree. And not unfortunately, but it's the way it is that the sex pop is what sells at the moment. So that's what's happening and that's what's out there. But that's fine. That's where it's at. And I'm sure, like you said, there'll be a wave of something. I'd love to see another wave of like guitar bands. Oh, I'd love that. And there's no reason why it can't. It just takes a genius. Yeah. It just takes a musical genius who can combine the unique with the familiar. Yeah. And then bring it together.
And it's one of the reasons I absolutely love Ed Sheeran. Yeah. I think because he's just a kid with his guitar, yeah? Yeah. And that's it, basically. And that's it. He's a brilliant songwriter, he's a brilliant guitar player, good singer. But he doesn't really have sex appeal, I wouldn't have thought.
No, and he sings about meaningful stuff, which probably he's probably up there as the number one around. So there you go. There's still a need for it if you've got the competency.
Absolutely. So yeah, good. Thanks for coming in anyway.
Yeah, no worries.
I appreciate you coming down.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here. Thanks. It's an honour to be on the show.
But I love what you're doing at the moment. Speaking of all things, breaking away, you're.
Yeah.
I was going to say you're unemployed, but you're not, because you run your own show now. But you've stepped away.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess there was a little bit of money that came through from a project that I was working on, which is a film, but it's not. It was hardly any money. But I guess some people have called it fun employed.
Fun employed.
Yeah.
Nice.
Some people have called it a sabbatical. But I started my own. I got my own ABN and started a company called Panther and Associates.
Yep.
So I've got the company. But it's So I resigned from my job in March. So it's been almost 4 months now. Writing. So I can go back to some of how I got there if you wanted me to. Why I left where I was.
Yeah.
I could talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Because I think just before you do, I think understanding too, just for the listeners, the job you were in, just really briefly, you were there for a fair stint.
Well, I was in advertising for 14 years.
And what I'd love to hear from you, I suppose, as we chat, is the fact that, because it's almost a little bit daunting for people to think of stepping away from a career, a steady career, to just tackle your own thing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It has been daunting, and it comes in waves. Like you're doing something. I was doing something that made me feel uncomfortable, but it was really, really exciting at the same time. So, when I graduated high school, I went to uni and did media and marketing, and I found screenwriting as a couple of electives, and I just fell in love with it in my sort of early 20s.
Why?
Well, I'd always been a massive movie buff,
huge
movie buff, but to see, I guess, the beginning of a film and like its inception, the embryonic stage. In a screenplay, and see how that then translates. I just found that really, really exciting. And as soon as I started to read the screenplays of the films that I loved, and then started to write, it was just like meditation for me. I just loved it. So I got after it in my 20s pretty hard. So I just started writing, and then ponied up my own money to make a short film with a mate of mine who I knew in high school, because there was a film festival called Tropfest that was a lot bigger back then than what it is now. It was huge back then.
Yeah.
And I went along to it in 2003 when I just sort of started writing, and there's 150,000 people in Sydney, and I think another 20,000 at the Myer Music Bowl watching. And they were 7-minute films, and I said, I reckon I could do this. And in 2005, I made the film, and it made the top 16 of
That's
Tropfest.
Incredible. But going back to that mindset though, watching something and thinking I could do that's one thing. But then having a crack and actually doing it's another thing. You obviously, you were a movie buff, as you say, but you obviously backed your creative mindset.
Yeah, I did for whatever reason, but that was probably what helped me, but it also ended up probably inhibiting me as I went on.
Right. Because
you have that sort of gut instinct and passion. And I put up my own money, so a short film, and we actually shot it on film, and it did really well.
So what did you say, 16?
It was shot on 16 mil, so I shot on film. So that was in 2005. So everything's shot on digital. So it's really expensive to shoot on film, but it feels a lot more authentic, and I love that sort of look in film. But anyway, that sort of did really well, and got on Qantas, and played in front of Heath Ledger and Jeffrey Rush. It was funny though. Like when we made it, it was a post 9/11 comedy,
right?
And we thought we'd missed the boat with like terrorism and like the post 9/11 thing, and it was about this paranoid father who lived in a post 9/11 world, and he'd trained his family in counter-terrorism and preparing for the end of the world. It was called Too Far. And it played really well in front of all those people, and
awesome.
And then there was interest to turn it into a series. So we got some funding to develop through Film Victoria into a series, and then we got money to make a pilot for it. So from 05 to 08, we were shooting a half-hour comedy pilot with Pete Rosethorn from Kath and Kim.
Awesome.
And in between then, we made another Tropfest film that made the top 16. So I went from having a dream and it quickly happening, and then soon realizing that I wasn't quite ready, because once we made that pilot of Too Far the Comedy, and comedy's really hard.
Yeah.
But success doesn't come that quickly. I mean, we worked hard, and I worked hard and put in a lot of my own time and money, but for whatever reason, it wasn't quite up to it. You know, when you go from short form to long form, that's the hardest jump. So
where did it go? Like, you filmed the pilot. Where did that go to a network or a?
Well, yeah. So Film Victoria had a pilot program, and they gave us, some money to make it. Yeah. And then our producer at the time, we tried to shop it round, and it was almost got sort of picked up by Channel 9, but it didn't. And then after that, I really sort of fell pretty flat, because I thought I was this sort of mid-20s Tarantino. Oh, man, how easy is this? I'm going straight to Hollywood. Yeah. And then bang, that doesn't happen. Yeah. So then from there, really what happened, life happened. And so from 2009 to 2019, I got married, had 2 kids, and my first, my daughter Billy, she was born with fully dislocated hips, and she didn't walk till well after 2, and so we went through that, and then I got divorced, so went through that, and last year father passes away. So over the space of 10 years, it was sort of, I was a kid just flying, and then life happened, and all these life started to challenge me a bit more. But in that whole time, I was working in advertising, and I got into advertising, funnily enough, through the short film, because I made the short film. I didn't really like my job, and I wanted to be in a creative space. So I got the job in advertising at a small agency, but I was made an account manager, so I wasn't like a film director or anything. I was just
you weren't really using creative.
No.
Right. So the reason you got there was just thrown out the window.
Yeah, pretty much. And then 14 years later, as an account manager, account director, so forth and so on, in a creative environment, but more as I guess client service person. Yeah. And I ended up being like quite good at it, because I love people, and I actually like to serve people and make them feel good. Yeah. So I ended up working hard and doing okay with it. But after those events of last year, losing Dad, I really had a massive reset, and the dream that I'd sort of, it's not that I'd put it on hold, because I was still writing during that whole period, but I was never dedicating enough time to actually cultivate anything worthwhile.
Did you feel like you knew you were doing that still, but weren't doing it really the justice you could have and should have?
Yeah, I think deep down, subconsciously, that really was eating away at me. Because I had my writing partner at the time, Cam Ford, who's just gone on and made a doco that's had a worldwide release through cinemas and stuff, and it's great. But he went to LA because we got a manager in LA while Billy was born. So he was there for a year getting after it while I was stuck at home. Yeah. And in LA we almost got a couple of things up. And it's one of those almost but not quite. There's millions of those stories. Sure. But that feeling of never doing it properly or giving it a red hot go is something that ate away at me for quite a while, and that that regret started to seep in, because there was a few different moments where I could have done things that I didn't, because I thought about honor of a family, honor of being a father. So you don't really think about yourself, but I think that's that can be a real risk for your mental health.
Absolutely.
If you don't do that.
Yep.
And I think sometimes, and maybe it's changing now, where when you have a family, you're sort of almost passively told that in certain environments that you can't pursue what you really, really want because you might be financially tied to a bank with your mortgage or time with your family and your partner. But you figure that out for yourself. But in that whole time in advertising, let's say I was at an agency for 3 years before I actually left the industry altogether. And before then, I was always had my hands in different pies and was never going all in.
Yep.
And I got to this company after the divorce, and I went through a rough trot through the divorce. And I just decided to go all in as an account director at this agency. And it was like I'd never been better as a worker, as a colleague. I met my partner now there, and was earning great money and had more success in those 3 years than I did in the 10 years before. So the lesson that I learned from that is if you give 100% effort into your goal, even doing something that I didn't want to do, well, that was the pivot after, because Dad, he worked at the AFL for 30 years and he did what he loved for such a long time. And at 37, when you go through that, I was just like, well, I've got to do it now. So I resigned after Christmas. I had because it was October, then Christmas, I did a lot of soul searching and I kind of bottomed out. I was looking at myself and in the mirror, and I wasn't really. I was talking to Anna, my partner, and I just said, I've fucked myself. I've trapped myself in my life. Like I cannot pursue this at all. Like I'm just going to have to give this away. And she sort of got me up off the canvas and said, no, you are doing it. You're writing. You just need to do more time. So let's work out a plan.
It's an interesting ride. Like, so you left with a plan, but then somewhere along the line just went, nah, can't, and just bottomed out. But that was before. So I left in March, but the December before the March was. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So before I'd resigned,
right.
I did a lot of soul searching over the Christmas break.
Yep.
And I didn't know I was going to do this.
Right.
But I was like, I totally just felt lost and felt my soul. I couldn't do another year of it.
Yeah.
Being an account director, which is kind of like, it's a real brown noser. Like you got to keep everyone happy, right? And and without keeping yourself happy.
That uses a lot of energy.
Oh man.
Emotional energy.
And you got to make budget each month.
Yeah.
And so you at 37, you don't have as much energy. So I'd come home and I just couldn't write. And so I went through that and we worked out an exit plan.
Yep.
And I think the biggest motivation was there was a book called The War of Art by this guy called Stephen Pressfield, which talks about writers and even other people that don't chase what their passion is.
Yep.
And this thing called resistance, that there's the life that you live, and then there's your unlived life, and the resistance sits in the middle. And resistance is it could be physical, as in your situation, as in people just not encouraging you to chase a dream, to trying to keep you in their environment, or it could be yourself, the fear. And he's made a good point that the pain of not doing it is worse than any fear of failure.
Yeah.
So I got to the point where I said, I'm not afraid of failing. I'm afraid of my failure to try. Like if I fail to not try, if I don't try, that's the worst.
Yeah.
And that's what this was about. So that's how I got here.
Losing your dad helped that mindset come on?
Absolutely. Because
was he always encouraging you on the writing side of things as opposed to your day job at the time?
Oh yeah. I mean, he was in, mum and dad, but they were just so encouraging. As soon as I, in my early 20s, said I want to be a screenwriter, they just said, go for it, get after it. And I shot too far at their house and dug a massive hole in their backyard, and they did the catering and all that, and then I shared that with them for a long time. And he knew deep down that that's what I wanted.
Yep.
It's a challenging thing to pursue.
Yep.
But it was more when you go through that, and I went through it in quite an intimate way. I was there when he passed, and you see life differently because you see how fickle it is and how insecure it is.
Yep.
So, I was on a merry-go-round, which a lot of people are, and that's fair enough. And I'm not a martyr saying everyone should just quit their job. If you want to, you need an exit strategy that's logical.
Yep.
But I got on that merry-go-round of life, and I didn't much like it. And that was mortgage, bills, insurance, all those things of a nice suburban life, and they add up where you find yourself maintaining all of those things outwardly, but you're not really listening to what your soul's saying. So I'm in a process of really shedding a lot of that shit away.
Yep.
And day to day, it's been great because we've worked out ways to save money. And little things like shopping at Aldi but even me not being in traffic now is just the best thing.
Yeah.
Working from home. But yeah, back to that point, it was
because I think with that, like and you've already mentioned it, but it's not so much when people have a goal or an idea of what would be they'd love to do, what they'd genuinely love to do, not what they're doing Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
It's and I reckon it's most of the time not, I wonder if I could. Like most of the time they'd nail it. It's just jumping and doing it. Because that's frightening, and you've just done it, so But it's hard to, because it's the norm too, I think is part of it. Breaking the norm these days is really a difficult thing to comprehend, I think. Yeah. In a world of, cost of living's higher than it's ever been.
Yep. And wages don't go up incrementally to match that.
So the pressure just mounts to the point where I think it's easier in a lot of ways to go, I might just have to reside to the fact that I won't probably do that. So hats off to you, and I love the concept of you doing it. And I'd love to think that people are able to.
Yeah, if you can work out a way to do it, and to have a great partner helps. She is great with my kids, plus supporting that decision and having someone that believes in me. Has been really, really special. Now, I'm not saying you need that to get after your dream, but when you're in a situation that I was, it certainly helped.
I think it's hugely important.
Yeah.
I think it's probably underrated, and I know it's not that's a bit of a throwaway comment, but it is something that's as vital as any part of that, puzzle. That support, that network, that support network. In all forms, like we've been through it recently with parenting. The support network just to go about the parenting, which is a major part of life. Obviously, that sounds ridiculous, but if you're not supporting each other, it makes it very difficult. We're in a situation where we often, my wife and I often say to each other, we couldn't do it without each other's support. We constantly need each other, which is awesome to know that we've got each other, and it's the same with you and Anna for sure. Like whether it's on a work front or a personal parenting front or fucking whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because life is hard, and it's when you get older, it gets harder.
Yeah.
So to be doing something that's really scary, you need someone to provide that levity and to have fun with, and to obviously provide an income. So, the reason though why I did leave, aside from that personal sort of emotional, I guess it was more of not a spiritual awakening, but when you realize how fickle life is, because he didn't even get a chance to retire and reflect and look back on this great career that he had, because it just got taken away from him within 2 years, right? So I was just like, oh, screw it, let's just go for it, and I'll get writing. But halfway between in 2018, I did have this concept for a film, and I wrote basically a draft of it by January this year. Yeah. And so that was the exit plan, was to really chase that film. It's a feature film. It's a mystery crime thriller set in Melbourne. And through the networks and the contacts that I've made as an account director in advertising, you meet people that learn about you, that other side of you, and people that believe in you because you've worked away at pitching your ideas to them over.
Awesome.
So
all of a sudden this piece is actually becoming maybe a piece that needed to happen. And now you're at a point where you're using that piece. Yeah. Where is that at? Or are you allowed to talk about that? Or is that
I can talk about it. It's, so I just did the second draft, completed that about 3 weeks ago. So I'm working with a production company on that. So the next stage is to get, I'm just waiting for some feedback on the script. And, they really believe in it, this production company. So
cool.
Once I get that feedback, we'll talk to some script people in LA more about some editing and improving to the next draft, and then that company who was set up to do that will then go and attempt and hopefully chase funding for it to then fund the film.
How do you feel when you hand over a script that you've written? It's your heart, your soul, your brain working, and you've written it to someone to read. Do you feel nervous? Does anxiety sort of kick in? Do you get annoyed if there's comments about it that you don't agree with, or where's your head at in that situation?
It depends on who you're getting to read it, I guess. Yeah. The team that I'm working with, once I got their feedback, and we actually had a quite an open session for 2 days on the film, and they were coming up with great ideas that were only making it better. So I don't have an ego with that, and I'm humble if there's another way to do it. It didn't change the idea of the film. It was just a stronger through line with some of the ideas we were throwing around.
Yeah.
So that process is, I find, to be the best process when you're actually working with other filmmakers and they know the genre and they're excited because they have a vision for it that matches yours.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, there's an idea in your head, and so you pitch an idea to someone and you do it in one sentence.
Yep.
And most people will know what that film should look like and feel like immediately if you pitched an idea for a film.
Yep.
And then you've got to write a script, so then it has to sort of elicit the same sort of feeling in the story and in the screenplay. So it's almost like I'm an unknown quantity having to prove myself at each mark. So all it was, I knew that dedicating that, what would have been 2 months straight on that draft 2, I'd never done that before like this.
Yeah.
So I felt that the conscious attention that I gave it, I was confident that it was a better draft than the draft before, and the response so far has been that. So you just get through each little step, and now the next one is to, there might be more changes to the script, but I'll do that. And there was a time where I wanted to write and direct, be that big time, like Tarantino writer, director.
Yeah, do it all.
Yeah, do it
Own
all,
it all.
and be the man but I'm not competent enough as a director, and I know that. And
how much faith do you have to have as a writer in a director or producer? Is it a director, producer, writer, they're all separate things, or?
Yeah, they're all separate things.
So a director who's taken your writing and is now making it happen, do you just have to have faith in that? Can you step back in?
Oh, the nature of the relationship is collaborative, and I think it will be for the process. So because these people I trust and have known for a long time, we all want the same thing. We all just want to make films.
Yep.
And we believe that the way content, or not content, but films and TV shows are sort of distributed through things like Netflix and Stan and Amazon, through to the multiplex. There's different avenues, and these channels, need good Australian genre films.
Yep.
So it's a good time to be making an independent film that's relatively cheap to make.
Where do you want your product to be? Do you want it to be on the big screen? Do you want to see your stuff rolled out through some of the Netflixes of the world? Or what's the long-term goal?
Yeah, well, we believe it has an international sales appeal as well. So if you can get some international sales as an independent film and screen at various festivals or other theatres around the world, then that's great. But if you can also, have one of those, major streaming services pick it up, that would be great, because it's almost like the DVD shelf. It sort of sits there forever if you make one, and that's a nice legacy.
Yep.
But the idea is to make a solid first film, and then pivot to the next one, and then get funding for that, and then so forth and so on. So you create, I guess, this flow of income.
Yep.
I'm not, obviously I need to earn money, but I just want to write, whether it be full-time or part-time. So the aim is to grow, but you got to nail the first one. So, it's like footy. You can't look at finals yet. You've got to take it a week at a time, as the D's would know.
Don't.
But it's still unknown,
because it must be like a tough industry to just even like, let alone your first one, but just in general. Even I'm assuming, even 10 in, you've still got to really work hard to put it out there and pitch it to the right people and platform. Yeah,
it's one of those industries where there's not much let up. It's almost like the footy world. Even if you get funding, you have to cast it right. You have to get the right people involved, and then when you make the film, you have to. It has to be critically well received, and then it has to pick up, in box office or in sales. So then if you make another one, if you're lucky enough to make another one, that you have to go through that whole thing again, and
with expectation on top of it,
probably,
which adds a bit of pressure.
Yeah, well, that all depends on the nature of how it's directed, and if you. When we believe we can create a tone of a film that is unique but familiar, which I think is the key. It has to be, genre makes it familiar. So if with a crime thriller, you know what you're getting yourself into. So you want to be seeing a bit of action, violence, suspense, maybe a bit of sex. You want to hold on to figure out what happens at the end, and you want great performances, and you want it to surprise you. So that's where that unique thing comes into it. So it's if you get known to make a certain genre of film, then it'll create a nice expectation for the next one. But you don't want to jump the shark and do something too different. You sort of got to building around certain genres, and then slowly start to expand out.
Well, typically you'd see most directors or writers sticking to that one genre right from local stuff all the way to Hollywood or whatever, don't you? These days, there's not too many. Is there many major jumps? Like, is someone doing a horror film then does a lighthearted comedy the next one?
They more do, I think, a bit later.
Yeah, okay.
I guess
it's kind of like music, I suppose, in that you might start out with a real rocky sort of album, and by album number 5 or 6, it's turned into pop with lots of electronic sort of beats all through it, I guess.
Yeah.
There's no rules either, by the way.
Not really, because someone like George Miller, who did Mad Max.
Yeah.
Mad Max is mental in every way. All the films are. But then he does something like Lorenzo's Oil, which is like a drama film in the 80s. So, it really depends. But, then you got a Scorsese who early in his career, it's gangsters and it's violence and it's high octane. And then a Tarantino, which is, everyone's favorite, including mine. you know what you're going to get with
Yep.
a Tarantino movie, no matter what era it's
Yeah.
set. It's just going to be a rollicking ride of fun, violence, incredible music, and actually really poignant moments.
Yep.
I like that sort of a director or filmmakers that can find a tone and a style that fans look forward to seeing.
Do you draw inspiration from that, or are you very much your own writer?
Well, the films that I really, in particular for this one, it's the title of it's called Rat-a-Tat. So this one in particular draws inspiration from like 70s crime thrillers, like
Cool.
3 Days of the Condor and French Connection, and there's films in the 80s like Frantic and Marathon Man. And it's sort of, I love those films where you have a metropolis and a society and people are going about their lives, but there's just something going on underneath the surface, clandestine stuff that no one really knows about, but it's right next to you or right underneath you.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
Cool.
And I reckon that shit happens all the time. We don't even know it.
In reality.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, if you look at, especially in Australia, how good our cops are at preventing those major disasters or the terrorist disasters.
Yeah.
That the MCG one, the Christmas Day one.
Yep.
Like how close could we have been to something like? And they're incredible that they can spend 24 hours, 24/7 on surveillance, and it's the benefit of being a long way away in Australia. Is customs have a little bit of an easier job than in Europe. But that shit is there, and it's
but sometimes I think it's not the worst thing not knowing.
Yeah.
As well.
No. Yeah.
And for the a lot of people could handle that information, but there's the majority that just there's no point bringing that up if there's no need to bring it up.
No.
Let's not cause hysteria for no reason.
No, there's enough hysteria that we generate ourselves, and that wasn't. I mean, I wasn't one of those people, but you look at your life at 37. And I did start to think, because, you spend, a quarter of your life or a third of your life, I think, sleeping.
Yep, something like that.
And I reckon, there's going to be people who spend another quarter on their phone, on social media, and they're going to wake up at 60 and think, what the fuck did I do with all of that time? And that opportunity cost, I think, is really dangerous, because the amount of time that's spent on that device, on those platforms, is going to breed a lot of bitterness for these people when they get older, because they're going to look back and, that's just a gut feeling of mine. Just
is it because of the amount of stuff that they're looking, the nature of the stuff that they're looking at and the amount of time they're looking at it is mostly negative? Is that what you mean? So as it becomes it becomes part of them as you get older. You're just so used to because the media just promotes negativity a lot of the time. Yeah. So without even trying, you can see some horrible shit and some really negative shit, to the point where you don't even think anymore. Just see it, it goes in, and maybe, in 20 years you get to a point where you are just negative because that's what you've been taught to be.
Facebook started out as a community network platform between your friends and family.
Yeah.
Great intentions, right? Now it's a media platform.
Yep.
So before, we used to hear a 30-second or spot on the news, and that would be it, and it was superficial, but you'd talk about it for a little bit with people, with your mates or whatever, but you wouldn't go on and talk about it more and get into arguments and spend all of that time, extra time, having these pointless conversations with people you don't know. So there's the time factor, but then there is the emotional factor about the emotions that environment tends to promote. And I think there was a guy called Plutchik who was this psychologist, and he spoke about that wheel of emotions. And there's eight basic emotions, and there's other emotions that connect to that. But I was thinking about the behavior of people on Twitter or social media, and just that outrage and anger. And so there's the 8 emotions. So you got anger, fear, I've actually wrote them down here.
I was speaking to someone the other day. I got off Twitter, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago or something, just because it wasn't what it was when I got on it. I used it as a news platform basically just to keep up, I suppose, without having to read a newspaper. Talking to a couple of friends recently who have still been on it up until now, and they were saying that it has turned into a real just shit fight. It's just negative. It's just arguing. It's just breeding ground for hate.
Yeah. So if you look at anger, disgust, sadness, fear, surprise, joy, trust, and anticipation were the 8 emotions that he was talking about, right? And sometimes I think we forget that we're actually human, and they're mainly the 8 emotions. So if you tend to skew towards, say, anger and disgust and fear, then you're going to start to embody that in your real life. And I look at it like how we behave in a car. In a car, we say the most outlandish things to people in road rage, like what we say to old ladies who cut you off. And it's the environment that promotes that behaviour. You wouldn't do that in when you're walking down the street.
No.
And I just think though that environment promotes that kind of similar car behaviour. Yeah. So the ones of surprise, joy, trust, anticipation aren't cultivated in that environment.
Yep.
So those 2 things, time and focus of emotion, what's that doing to our society and the time that it's wasting preventing evolution?
Yeah.
That's just something that sort of freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if it becomes more normal to feel that because it's kind of what's in your face, that's hard to handle. You don't want that, but it's kind of happening already.
Yeah,
in society, isn't it?
And that's one thing to sort of detach from that stuff has been great. So I've detached from the car,
and
I've detached from that stuff as well.
Okay,
listening to more podcasts.
Cool.
And not sort of. I mean, I didn't really anyway, but you know when you're at work and you're checking your phone and social media and all that. Yeah. I mean, everyone does
That's
it.
That's right, you do it.
But it's good to sort of cut that back as well.
Totally. So with the current project that's happening now, how far is it until finish point? Just, I guess, for anyone listening, if who wants to follow it a bit, is there an end date or anything where people might start seeing it?
Look, it's the draft's at a good stage, so I don't know how long it's going to take the team to raise funding, but I'm hoping within the next year to maybe 2 years, we could at least get funding for it. I mean, that would be great. I mean, You've got to be realistic. Like Animal Kingdom, which is one of the best Australian films of all time, took 10 years to get off the ground, right? Bigger budget, bigger cast, but in this day and age, we're hoping with a good script, we can, get it going the next year to 12 months. Oh, sorry, year to 2 years.
Yeah.
So just keep an eye out for the name Rat-a-Tat, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I'm working on is the sci-fi comic as well. So I'm aiming for that to be almost like a passive income over time.
Okay. So what's that?
Well, again, using your advertising network. In 2012, or 13, I joined this another agency, and I met this guy called Mito Cubic.
Okay.
Who is Bosnian.
Right.
And
that's a cool name.
Yeah. Oh, he's a cool guy.
Good.
And he was a designer, but he was also an incredible illustrator.
Okay.
And
cool.
Big sci-fi comic fan. And I had this idea for a sci-fi film called The Dark System. And
so you're a sci-fi fan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time.
Big time.
Mm.
Okay.
So I had this, and it was sort of like the concept for it was Chinatown set in space. So it's like it's another murder mystery, but set in space. Like a space detective.
Yeah.
That was sort of but really dark.
Yeah, okay.
So I pitched him the idea and he really liked it. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been working on this comic.
Wow.
And we're close to having, I think, volume 1, and it could be 2 volumes done.
Okay.
So I'm in the process while I'm waiting for this, the feature to get feedback. So I'm now finishing writing the comic. So I wrote all the frames out. You write all the panels out in a comic and the description and a bit of the dialogue. And Mito's taken 4 years. It's he has his own pace, but he's a
Don't rush him.
Key part of the.
Yeah.
I mean, the illustrations are, I believe, 70% of it. They're that good.
Sure. Especially for grabbing people, I suppose, initially.
Yeah.
So comics, excuse my naivety, are they still a thing?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Is it in physical print format or is it more in a digital format?
It's both.
Okay.
The good thing about comics now, I mean, compared to a film where you've got to go through a process of raising funding, and a lot of people have to tick it off, and with the comic, it's just me and Mito.
Yep.
So if you were to write a full novel, you definitely need to go to a publisher.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas with this comic, we're looking at self-publishing. So what you can do is Amazon have this site called Comixology where you submit it, and if they like it or believe it's sellable, they'll put it up there and they take 50% and you take 50% and they don't own it. You can still distribute it.
Yeah.
So that independence is appealing for this.
It's not dissimilar to why I like doing this. The podcast thing is you can take it as far or as hard as you want. I love the idea of just being able to I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit down and have a chat and bring in Matt and have a chat. Like, do you know what I mean? So there's no, like I said, I've done podcasts in the past for the likes of Southern Cross, Austereo and that sort of thing. And there's still freedom in that, but it's very much structured in how not just the actual content, but how it all goes behind the scenes as well. I kind of wanted to do something for myself for a couple of years and just sort of started. But with that freedom in mind that you speak about, there's no one pushing me, no one giving me any restrictions on anything at the moment. And down the track, if I want to take a different path with it, I can. There's different avenues and different paths to go. But
I think that independence, I mean, if you look at the negatives of the things we were talking about, there's actually real positives to how quickly you could amplify, as long as you set up with the right platforms to amplify your product. And because we've been working on it for so long and we really believe in it, we feel at this stage, let's test the market by self-publishing, and that's printing, but also online. Actually getting dirty and going to Comic Con festivals, paying for a stand there. And getting everything printed.
You'll get some honest feedback there, no doubt.
Get honest feedback.
Those things. Have you been to one of those?
Yeah, I've been to a couple.
All I hear is they're just, in a positive way, nuts.
Yeah, and because so that's the good thing worldwide in that industry is there are cult followings, but
that's also a direct contact to your market. So that's brilliant to do something like that, to take that particular idea there.
Yeah.
And
it is exciting, but we don't want to have to be validated by someone we don't know, sitting in an office.
Yeah.
I'd rather get dirty. And it's like a startup in a way. And that's the beauty of it. So that'll be interesting when, when we go through that process, we get some merch. And
I'll have a shirt, thanks.
Yeah.
Do you know what I love? That has been in the pipelines for, what did you say, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
And you still very much sound passionate about it.
Oh, yeah.
Those things, a lot of the time, in all formats of anything, can drop off pretty quickly after a couple of years. If you haven't finished or you haven't got to sort of X spot, it's very easy to go, fuck it, too hard, or I'll get to that another time.
Well,
I love that you're sort of almost at the finished end, and after that period of time, you haven't given up, and you still sound really passionate about it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I believe the only reason you fail is because you give up. It's not, and if you just keep that, with a little pulse, and don't allow it to flatline, which is what, every time Mito sends me through another frame or page, which is, it's amplified now that he knows I've quit my job. So now he's sending them through
regularly
every week, whereas it used to be once a month. So he's seeing the opportunity in it, and we're both keen to get after it.
Awesome.
And just that, the quality of what he's doing, combined with what, the imagination that I had for the story, is really exciting. And then you think, you sort of long term what that can also turn into. Because if you start, low hanging door. Sorry, if you start low, you get a door only open so far. You get a low opportunity. So we know we have to start at the bottom. But if you can build it up over a number of years, you never know what other platforms you can go into, whether it be movies and things like that. But with the great thing with literature, and comics is even though I might get to the point where I physically can't do it anymore. The great thing with the written word and also, audio stuff is that you can pass it on to a generation. And like a manuscript, my son or daughter could pick it up or someone else.
Totally.
And that's enough of a legacy, for me by just doing that. And that's, I mean, I've been listening to, for whatever reason, 1940s radio theatre the last week.
Right.
Edgar Allan Poe murder mysteries.
Okay.
So, and that shit's incredible.
Yeah. I sat down with my grandfather recently and had a chat to him with microphones. And we went through bits about his life and all. I find his life really interesting. But it came about just thinking one day, there will be a time when he won't be telling that story anymore. And I don't want the kids to miss out on hearing, my kids miss out on hearing that.
Yeah.
We can pass on stories and details and that's great. I thought, how cool would it be to actually have a recording of it where he's actually talking about it himself? So we did that, and I'm so glad I have. And 50 years' time or whatever, my kids and their kids and whatever else can listen to it, and they might not want to, but if they do, it's there. And that legacy, like as you say, I want to do that more. I found it really satisfying to do that. And as I say, I'm really interested in his story and his life. And now I've got that forever to share with my kids and friends and family and whatever too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to even the people that you bring on, that's a great, area of people or age of people, like, to bring on. Because I know my partner wants to interview her grandfather.
Yep.
I mean, what a great format to do it on in a sort of podcast environment, because you're just having a chat.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And that Jocko podcast that I love, when the Vietnam War guys get on or the World War II guys get on who have survived prisoner of war camps.
Oh, man.
Like that's incredible stuff. And that wisdom and age there's gold in some of their stories.
Oh, yeah. You could listen to that stuff for hours.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And there's something really raw and honest and authentic about hearing those stories, but also just, like if it's your parents or your grandparents or something too. But I get a real kick out of just chatting to people in general, and like yourself, we've got lots of, cool people that are going to sit down and have a chat in these podcasts, which I'm pretty pumped about. So, man, I should let you go. Thanks heaps for coming down. It's been awesome to chat with you.
Oh, no, thanks, Luke. Yeah, it's great to sort of to talk about, and I really appreciate the interest. And I think it's good for listeners, to understand that I do have, there's uncertainty with what I'm doing. I'm not there yet. I'm sort of in the middle of it. So, I appreciate you being interested in that journey.
It's also the step. It's also that step. The thing that interests me a whole lot is taking that step that you've taken, or anyone taking that. I think it's so important. And if you can, and as you said tonight, set yourself up to do it. So that exit strategy out of your day job, whatever it may be, or whatever the situation, into what you want to be doing. If that's there, you can do it.
Well, I look at it this way: if you want to win the pot, you got to go all in. Yeah. Yeah, and that's sort of I might not win. But I'll play another hand next time. You also won't have what if. No, and that's right. That's important. That's number one. That's number one. No regrets, and hopefully we'll have some good news, and we'll see what happens. But I love having a chat with you, and you'll be back. I'm going to drag you back in here for sure. Oh well, and with you too. I think it's a great idea. Just the tone and the sort of people that you can bring in is unrestricted, and I agree with you. I think every individual has an interesting story.
100%. Definitely.
And I think sometimes it's discriminated based on a superficial perception. But I appreciate you having me on.
No worries. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, buddy.